Americans exposed roughly $35 billion on lawn and garden spending last year alone, and a staggering amount of that money went straight into the trash. Flowers that looked perfect in May, completely dead by October. Entire flats of color, gone before Thanksgiving. That is not gardening. That is a donation to the compost pile. But there are plants that refuse to die. They come back every single spring, stronger than the year before, spreading on their own, blooming for months, and costing you absolutely nothing the second year, the third year, or the 10th. 11 of them belong in every American garden, and the last one on this list does something so unusual that most gardeners have never even considered it. You plant a perennial once, and it returns year after year, bigger, tougher, and more floriferous than the season before. It feeds pollinators, fills borders, and the only attention most of them ask for is occasional deadheading and a trim. The 11 on this list were chosen specifically for American growing conditions, proven performance across multiple USDA zones, and long-term value that compounds with every passing season. Now, the gardeners who watch this channel every week already know that the information here saves them real money, real time, and real frustration. They stopped guessing. If you are not subscribed yet, that one tap is the difference between finding answers handed to you every week and spending hours searching on your own. That is not a sales pitch. That is just how it works. Number 1. Echinacea, the coneflower. This plant has been growing in American soil longer than any garden center has been open for business. It is native to the prairies and Great Plains, and it thrives from Zone 3 all the way down to Zone 9. That is nearly the entire country. The plant reaches 2 to 4 feet tall, spreads about 18 inches to 2 feet, and produces those signature daisy-like flowers with the raised central cone in shades of deep pink, purple, orange, white, red, and yellow, depending on which cultivar you choose. The stems are sturdy enough to hold up through summer storms and gusty wind without any staking. Give it full sun, at least 6 hours of direct light, though it can handle a little afternoon shade in the hotter southern zones. Now, the part that trips people up: rich soil actually hurts Echinacea. This plant performs best on average to poor, well-drained ground. If you load it up with fertilizer and amended soil, it grows tall, leggy, and floppy. Lean soil keeps it compact and strong. It does not want wet feet either, so heavy clay that holds water will cause problems. Aim for a pH between 6.0 and 7.0, and once the roots establish, this plant handles drought without complaint. Blooming runs from June all the way through September if you stay on top of deadheading. Cut the spent flowers just above the next bud or leaf node, and the plant redirects its energy into producing more blooms instead of setting seed. But when fall arrives, leave those seed heads standing. Goldfinches, chickadees, and other seed-eating birds depend on them through the winter months, and those dried cones look architectural and striking when morning frost settles on them. Divide your clumps every 3 to 4 years to keep them vigorous, and you will have a plant that essentially manages itself. Deer walk right past Echinacea. Butterflies cover it. Native bees and hummingbirds visit it heavily, and because it is a true North American native, it supports local pollinator populations in a way that most imported perennials simply cannot match. That matters, especially if you care about your garden contributing something real to the ecosystem beyond just looking pretty in June. If you already grow Echinacea, drop your USDA zone and your favorite cultivar in the comments. That kind of real-world feedback from actual gardeners is worth more than anything printed on a plant tag. Number 2. Astilbe. If you have a north-facing border, a shaded foundation bed, or a woodland edge where nothing seems to bloom, stop fighting the shade and start planting for it. Astilbe does not just tolerate low light. I prefer it. This plant grows anywhere from 1 to 4 feet tall depending on the variety, and spreads 18 inches to about 3 feet. The flowers are feathery, plume-like spikes that rise above fern-shaped foliage in shades of white, pale pink, deep magenta, and rich red. The texture is unlike anything else on this list. Soft, airy, almost like colored smoke lifting off the bed. It brings an entirely different visual quality to a shade garden that hostas and ferns alone cannot deliver. Partial to full shade is where Astilbe thrives. In cooler northern zones, it can handle gentle morning sun, but hot afternoon light, especially in Zone 7 and warmer, will scorch the foliage and shorten the bloom. The soil needs to be rich, moist, and well-drained, and consistent moisture is not optional. Let this plant dry out and it will crisp up, go dormant, and look miserable until the following spring. Keep the pH slightly acidic, around 6.0 to 6.5, and mulch around the base to help the ground hold moisture through summer. USDA zones 3 through 8 are the sweet spot. Gardeners in the deep south will struggle with Astilbe unless they have deep shade and reliable irrigation. Maintenance is minimal. The spent plumes can stay on the plant. They dry to a warm tan color and add texture to the winter garden. Or cut them back after blooming if you prefer a cleaner look. Either way, take all the foliage down to the ground in late fall or early spring, and divide clumps every 3 to 4 years in spring to keep them healthy and blooming strong. Deer leave it alone, which is a bonus for gardeners in rural areas where browsing pressure is constant. The real value of Astilbe is that it solves a problem most perennial lists completely ignore. The vast majority of recommended perennials are sun lovers, and if your property has significant shade, you end up feeling like those lists were written for someone else's yard. This plant is specifically for you. Number 3. Hardy geranium, the cranesbill. Before anything else, let me clear up a confusion that has cost American gardeners an enormous amount of money. The bright red and pink geraniums hanging in baskets at every Home Depot and Lowe's across the country are not actually geraniums. Those are pelargoniums, and they are annuals. They die at the first hard frost, and you have to buy them again next year. Hardy cranesbill geraniums are the real thing. They are true perennials, and they come back stronger every single spring. The plant grows low, forming a dense mound 8 to 18 inches tall and spreading about 18 to 24 inches. The flowers are saucer-shaped, appearing in blue, purple, pink, magenta, and white, and the fine textured foliage often turns red or bronze in fall, giving you a second season of visual interest long. After the blooms finish, Roseanne is the cultivar most U.S. gardeners should start with, reliable, long-blooming, and widely available. Cranesbill performs best in partial shade to full shade, though varieties like Roseanne can handle full sun in cooler climates. The soil requirements are forgiving. Average, well-drained ground works fine, and it adapts to most types including clay, as long as drainage is reasonable. USDA zones 4 through 8. Water needs are moderate. It does not want to sit in standing water, but it is not a drought survivor either. The one maintenance step that separates gardeners who love this plant from gardeners who think it is just okay. After the first flush of flowers fades in midsummer, shear the entire plant back by about half. It sounds aggressive, but within a few weeks it pushes out a complete flush of fresh foliage and a full second round of blooms that carries through until frost. Most gardeners never do this, and they never realize how much performance they are leaving on the ground. Cranesbill spreads gradually and suppresses weeds as it goes, functioning like a living mulch beneath shrubs, along pathways, or spilling over low stone walls. Deer and rabbits leave it alone, and the clumps are remarkably long-lived. Properly sited, a single planting can persist and perform for decades without needing replacement. Now, if you are watching this, and you have already picked up at least one tip that changes how you approach your garden, that is exactly the kind of detail this channel delivers consistently. The gardeners who subscribe are the ones who stop making the same expensive mistakes season after season. One tap, and every new video shows up in your feed automatically. No searching, no guessing, no missing out. Number 4, Salvia, perennial sage. If you have a sunny border and you are not growing perennial salvia, you are walking past the longest, most generous bloom season available to any American gardener. The plant grows 18 to 36 inches tall and spreads about 18 to 24 inches. The flowers are upright spikes of tubular blooms in purple, blue, pink, red, and white, and the two cultivars every U.S. gardener should know by name are Maynite and Caradonna. Both produce strong vertical forms that give structure and backbone to a mixed border, standing upright while softer mounding plants billow around them. Full sun is essential, at least 6 hours of direct light, and the more it gets, the more it blooms. Well-drained average soil is perfect. Salvia tolerates poor ground and drought once established, but it will not forgive heavy wet clay that stays soggy. USDA zones 4 through 9, which covers the vast majority of the country. Bloom season runs from May through September, and that statement alone is remarkable. but the real secret is in the deadheading technique. When a flower spike begins to fade, cut it back to just above a healthy set of leaves. That single cut redirects the plant's energy away from producing seeds and straight into producing new flowers. Do this consistently and you can pull 3, sometimes 4 complete flushes of bloom from one plant in a single growing season. 4 rounds of flowers from May to September from a perennial that asks for almost nothing in return. That is the kind of value that makes experienced gardeners shake their heads for not planting it sooner. Hummingbirds target the purple and red varieties relentlessly. The aromatic foliage repels deer, rabbits, and most browsing animals. And the drought tolerance, once roots establish, makes salvia ideal for water-conscious gardeners across the western states where every drop counts. Coming up, the next plant on this list has replaced lavender in thousands of American gardens, and the one after that has foliage so unusual, most gardeners walk right past it at the nursery without realizing it delivers color 12 months a year. Stay with me. Here is segment 2. Number 5. Nepeta, or catmint. Let me save some of you a lot of heartache right now. If you have tried growing lavender and watched it rot in humid summer air, drown in wet winter soil, or just quietly disappear after one season, you are not alone. Millions of American gardeners have had that exact experience. Catmint gives you the same billowy blue-purple haze, the same soft texture, the same pollinator frenzy, with 10 times the reliability across a far wider range of U.S. climates. The plant forms a relaxed mound anywhere from 12 to 36 inches tall, depending on the variety. Walker's Low is the cultivar most American gardeners should reach for first. Roughly 30 inches tall, about 36 inches wide, covered in soft lavender blue flower spikes sitting above. Aromatic, silvery green foliage. When a full row of catmint is blooming along a garden path, the entire border looks like a low-hanging cloud of blue. Nothing else produces that effect so consistently. Full sun is essential, and the soil should be well drained, average to lean. This plant actually prefers poor ground and heat. Rich, fertile beds make it floppy and weak. Root rot from soggy soil is the primary killer, so heavy clay without drainage is the one condition it will not tolerate. USDA zones 3 through 9, and unlike lavender, it handles heat and humidity across the southeast and mid-Atlantic without breaking a sweat. Bloom season stretches from late spring through early fall, making it one of the longest performing perennials available anywhere. After the first flush of flowers fades around midsummer, shear the entire plant back by half. Within 3 to 4 weeks, compact fresh growth fills in and a complete second round of bloom opens up. That hard cutback also prevents the center of the mound from flopping open and looking ragged, which is the #1 complaint gardeners have when they skip this step. Bees absolutely swarm catmint when it is flowering. Deer want nothing to do with it. Rabbits ignore it completely. The aromatic foliage repels a wide range of pest insects, and if you plant it along a walkway, every time you brush past it releases a clean herbal scent into the air. One thing to mention, catmint is a close relative of catnip, so if you have outdoor cats, they may roll around in it and flatten a few stems. Whether that is a bonus or a headache depends entirely on your situation. I know this one starts arguments, so settle it in the comments. Have you successfully grown lavender in a humid climate, or has catmint taken its place in your beds? Tell me where you garden and which one won. Number 6. Alchemilla mollis, commonly called lady's mantle. Most gardeners walk right past this plant at the nursery because the flowers are not big, bright, or showy. That is a mistake that costs them one of the most elegant and useful perennials available for American gardens. Lady's mantle forms a low, dense mound about 12 to 18 inches tall and 18 to 24 inches wide. The leaves are the first thing that stops you. Rounded, scalloped edges with a velvety surface that causes water to bead up and sit on the leaf like drops of liquid mercury. After a rain shower or on an early morning when the dew is still heavy, those leaves hold light in a way that makes the entire plant glow. It is one of the most photographed details in any garden, and once you have seen it, you understand why people fall in love with this plant. The flowers appear in late spring and early summer as loose sprays of tiny chartreuse green blooms. That acid green color is almost impossible to find in any other perennial, and it functions as a visual bridge in the garden. It makes every neighboring flower look richer and more vivid by contrast. Cut a few stems for a vase arrangement. Tuck them in beside roses or peonies, and watch how they lift the entire bouquet. Florists charge a premium for that effect, and you can grow it in your own yard for free. Partial shade to full sun works for the lady's mantle, though it performs best with morning light and afternoon shade in zones 7 and warmer. In cooler northern areas, it handles full sun without issue as long as the soil holds some moisture. Average, moist, well-drained ground is ideal, with a pH between 6.0 and 7.5. Consistent watering produces the lushest foliage. Drought stress shows up as brown, crispy leaf edges that take away from the plant's signature beauty. USDA zones 3 through 8. After flowering winds down, cut the entire plant, stems and foliage together, back to the ground. It sounds drastic, but within a few weeks, a completely fresh mound of clean new leaves emerges, looking as good as it did in spring. The one caution with lady's mantle is self-seeding. If you let those spent flower heads drop their seed, you will find volunteers popping up everywhere the following year. Some gardeners welcome that. Others find it aggressive. The solution is simple. Snip the flower stems before the seeds mature and scatter, and the plant stays exactly where you put it. Deer leave the lady's mantle alone, which makes it a reliable choice for rural and suburban properties where browsing pressure runs high. Number 7. Hydrangea. This is probably the most emotionally significant plant on the entire list for American gardeners. A lot of you watching right now have a memory attached to hydrangeas. Your grandmother's front porch, a neighbor's fence line, a summer vacation where a massive blue bush stopped you mid-step. No other flowering shrub carries that kind of personal weight in this country. But here is the problem. Hydrangeas confuse people. Even experienced gardeners get tripped up by the one distinction that determines whether their plant produces spectacular blooms or nothing at all. Old wood versus new wood. If you learn nothing else from this entire video, learn this because it will save you years of frustration. First, the basics. Hydrangeas range from about 3 feet tall and wide for compact varieties, all the way up to 8 feet for larger types. The 5 main categories U.S. gardeners encounter are mophead, lacecap, panicle. Limelight is the most popular, smooth, Annabelle is the classic, and oakleaf. Flower heads can reach 12 inches across on some cultivars. The visual impact in a garden is enormous. Few plants deliver that kind of sheer volume of bloom. Partial shade suits most hydrangeas best. Morning sun with afternoon shade is the standard formula, and it works across most of the country. Panicle types tolerate the most direct sun. Oakleaf varieties handle the deepest shade. Blasting full afternoon light in zones 7 and warmer will wilt the flowers and scorch the foliage on most types, so placement matters. Rich, moist, well-drained soil is essential. These are heavy drinkers. Inconsistent watering, especially during summer heat, leads to wilting, crispy leaf margins, and reduced bloom the following season. Keep them hydrated. Now the color question. For macrophylla types, mopheads and lacecaps, soil pH determines flower color. Acidic soil with a pH below 6.0 produces blue flowers. Alkaline soil above 7.0 produces pink. You can push the color by amending with aluminum sulfate for blue or garden lime for pink. But this only applies to macrophylla varieties. Panicle and smooth hydrangeas bloom white or green regardless of what your soil pH reads. Adjusting pH for those types changes nothing. USDA hardiness depends on the type. Panicle hydrangeas are the toughest, surviving reliably in zone 3. Macrophylla types are the most tender, generally zones 5 through 9. Smooth and oakleaf varieties fall somewhere in between. Now the pruning distinction that makes or breaks everything. Macrophylla and oakleaf hydrangeas bloom on old wood. That means the flower buds for next year's display are formed on this year's stems during late summer and fall. If you cut those stems back in autumn or winter, you are physically removing next year's flowers. Gone. This is the #1 reason American gardeners complain that their hydrangeas refuse to bloom. They pruned at the wrong time. For these types, leave the spent flower heads on through winter. They actually provide frost protection for the buds beneath them. In spring, prune only dead wood. That is all. Panicles and smooth hydrangeas are the opposite. They bloom on new wood, meaning flowers form on the current season's fresh growth. Cut these back hard in late winter or early spring, and they respond by pushing vigorous new stems that flower the same year. You cannot overprune these types. The harder you cut, the stronger they grow. For anyone who wants free plants, Propagation is straightforward. Take a non-flowering stem, strip the lower leaves, dip the cut end in rooting hormone, and push it into a moist potting mix. Roots form within 4 to 6 weeks. One healthy mother plant can become 10 new ones within a couple of seasons, at zero cost. If that pruning breakdown just cleared up something you have been confused about for years, this is exactly the level of detail this channel delivers every single week. Subscribing takes 1 second, and it guarantees the next video reaches your feed without you having to search for it. The gardeners who are subscribed already understand that. Number 8. Heuchera, commonly known as coral bells. Most gardeners think perennials are about flowers. Heuchera challenges that entire idea, because this plant is about foliage, and it provides year-round color when absolutely nothing else in the bed is blooming. It is also native to North America, which gives it built-in resilience across a wide range of American climates. The plant forms a tight, compact mound, 8 to 18 inches tall and 12 to 18 inches wide. The leaves are the entire show. They come in an almost absurd range of colors, including deep plum purple, electric lime green, warm caramel, polished silver, rich burgundy, soft peach, and shades so dark they appear nearly black. Delicate flower spikes rise above the foliage in late spring, carrying tiny bell-shaped blooms in white, pink, or coral. Those flowers are attractive enough on their own, but make no mistake, you are investing in this plant for the leaves. Partial shade is the sweet spot. Darker-leaved cultivars handle more direct sun without fading. Lime and gold varieties need protection from intense afternoon light, or the color scorches out. Morning sun with afternoon shade works reliably for the widest range of cultivars. Soil drainage is critical. Crown rot from soggy, waterlogged ground is the #1 way gardeners lose Heuchera. Average fertility, pH between 6.0 and 7.0, and slightly raised planting in heavy clay soils all help keep the crown dry and healthy. USDA zones 4 through 9. Maintenance is low. Remove spent flower stalks by cutting them at the base. Over time, the woody crown can heave upward out of the soil, leaving the base looking exposed and leggy. If you notice that happening, either mound fresh soil around it or dig the plant up, divide it, and replant the divisions a little deeper. Dividing every 3 to 4 years keeps clumps looking full and vigorous. The real power of Heuchera is what it does for garden design. A row of deep purple coral bells lining a pathway creates as much visual impact as any flower in peak bloom. Hummingbirds visit the flower spikes consistently, and because the foliage often stays semi-evergreen through winter in milder zones, you get color and presence in the garden during months when everything else is dormant. Plant a few in containers on your front porch, and you have 12 months of curb appeal from a single perennial that asks almost nothing of you. The next plant on this list is the closest thing to unkillable that the gardening world has ever produced, and the one after that blooms when every other perennial in your yard has already quit for the season. Keep watching. Number 9. Sedum, also called stone crop. If you have ever looked at your garden and said out loud that you kill everything, this plant is your redemption. Sedum is the closest thing to an indestructible perennial that exists anywhere in American horticulture. Neglect it, forget about it, plant it in the worst patch of your yard, and it will still look good. That is not an exaggeration. That is just what this plant does. Upright varieties like Autumn Joy grow 18 to 24 inches tall and about the same width. Low-growing ground cover types like Dragon's Blood stay under 6 inches and spread across rocky slopes, crevices, and edges where nothing else will take hold. The foliage is fleshy, thick, and succulent-like, appearing in shades of green, blue-green, deep purple, and variegated combinations. The flower heads start as tight green clusters that look almost like tiny broccoli florets, then slowly open into soft pink or rosy red, and finally age into a rich russet bronze as fall deepens. Every single one of those stages is attractive. There is no ugly phase with sedum. It earns its place in the garden 12 months out of the year, and very few perennials can make that claim honestly. Full sun is essential, a minimum of 6 hours, and more is better. The soil should be poor to average and very well drained. This is the rare plant that actually suffers in rich, fertile ground. Too much nutrition makes the stems weak, floppy, and unable to support the heavy flower heads. Sandy, rocky, gravelly soil that most other perennials would reject is exactly where sedum thrives. USDA zones 3 through 10, which covers virtually the entire continental United States. Drought tolerance is exceptional once the roots establish. Overwatering and heavy, waterlogged clay are the only real threats to this plant's survival, and even those take effort to cause serious damage. Bloom time runs from late summer through fall, which is critical because sedum fills the exact gap in the garden calendar when the majority of spring and summer perennials are fading out. While everything else is winding down, sedum is just hitting its peak. One maintenance technique makes a noticeable difference. In late May or early June, cut the stems back by about 1/3. This is sometimes called the Chelsea chop, and what it does is force the plant to produce shorter, stockier, sturdier growth that holds itself upright through late summer and fall without flopping over under the weight of the flower heads. Skip this step, and you may end up with stems splaying outward by September. Do it, and the plant stays compact, tidy, and self-supporting. Do not deadhead sedum in autumn. The dried seed heads are gorgeous through winter, standing upright even through snow, catching frost, and giving the garden structure during months when most beds are flat and empty. Cut the entire plant to the ground in early spring when you see the fresh, succulent rosettes emerging at the base, and the cycle starts again. Late-season pollinators rely heavily on sedum because so few other nectar sources remain active that late in the year. Butterflies and bees cover the flower heads in September and October, making it one of the most important fall resources in any pollinator-friendly garden. Tell me something in the comments. What is the worst soil condition in your yard? And have you ever tried sedum in that spot? I am willing to bet someone watching right now has grown this plant in pure gravel or construction fill and watched it flourish. That kind of real experience helps every gardener here. Number 10. Japanese anemone. Every gardener knows the feeling. September arrives, the summer color is spent, the beds look tired, and the whole garden slumps into that awkward stretch where nothing seems to be happening. Japanese anemone exists to solve that exact problem, and it does it with a grace and elegance that very few fall-blooming perennials can match. The plant grows 2 to 4 feet tall and spreads 2 to 3 feet, gradually expanding its territory through underground runners. The flowers are single or semi-double, appearing in white, soft pink, or deep rose, and they sit on tall, thin, wiry stems that branch and sway with every breeze. The effect is remarkable. The blooms seem to float above the foliage, dancing in the air as if they are barely attached to the plant at all. Below the flowers, a dense mound of dark green, grape leaf-shaped foliage anchors the display and provides a rich backdrop that makes the delicate petals stand out even more. Partial shade to full sun suits Japanese anemone well. The ideal positionings is morning sun with afternoon shade, which protects the flowers from bleaching in harsh light, while giving the plant enough energy to produce abundant blooms. In cooler northern zones, full sun works fine as long as moisture stays consistent. Rich, moist, well-drained soil amended with compost at planting gives the best results. Consistent watering through summer is important because drought stress during the growing season directly reduces the number of flowers you get in fall. USDA zones 4 through 8. Once established, maintenance is simple. Remove spent flower stems at the base after the blooming period ends. The plant does spread through underground runners, and in ideal conditions, it can be assertive about claiming new ground. It is not invasive in the aggressive sense, but it will expand beyond its original footprint over time. Dividing every 3 to 4 years keeps it in check if the spread is more than you want. Leave the foliage standing through winter to insulate the crown, then cut everything to the ground in early spring before fresh growth begins. One important note, Japanese anemone sometimes takes a full year, occasionally 2, to establish itself before blooming heavily. Patience during that settling-in period pays off enormously once the plant hits its stride. The fall timing is truly the superpower here. While asters provide some late-season color and ornamental grasses offer texture, Japanese anemone brings a refined, almost ethereal flowering display to the autumn garden that nothing else replicates. Pair it with sedum, tall grasses, and late-blooming asters, and you have a fall border that looks intentional, designed, and fully alive during the months when most American gardens have checked out for the year. Deer avoid it completely. and it performs reliably in those tricky, partially shaded areas where most fall-blooming plants refuse to cooperate. If you have picked up even 2 or 3 ideas from this video that change how you plan your garden this season, you already understand what this channel is about. Practical, detailed, real-world information that saves you from wasting money on plants that fail and guides you toward the ones that actually perform. The gardeners who subscribe stay ahead of every season because the next video is always waiting in their feed before they even think to search for it. That is the advantage. One tap, and it is yours. Number 11. Lupin. There is no other way to say this. If you have never seen a row of lupins in full bloom, you have never seen a garden reach its full visual potential. This is the showstopper, the jaw-dropper, the plant that makes people stop their car, get out, and walk over to a stranger's fence just to ask what it is. Nothing else in the perennial world produces flower spikes this dramatic, this colorful, or this utterly impossible to ignore. The plant rises 3 to 4 feet tall and spreads about 18 inches to 2 feet. The flowers form dense, towering spikes packed with pea-like blooms in bicolor combinations that seem almost painted. Blue and white, pink and yellow, purple and cream, solid crimson, solid gold. The foliage below is palmately compound, shaped like a spread hand with fingers radiating outward, and it is attractive in its own right even before a single flower opens. When those spikes are standing at full height in late May and June, the visual impact is unmatched by any other perennial on this list, or any list. Full sun is non-negotiable, at least 6 hours of direct light. The soil must be well drained and slightly acidic to neutral, with a pH between 5.5 and 7.0. Alkaline ground causes problems, and soggy wet conditions lead to crown rot, which is the fastest way to lose a lupin. Sandy or loamy soil is ideal. USDA zones 3 through 7. And this is where honesty matters. Lupins are cool climate perennials. They perform best in the Pacific Northwest New England, the upper Midwest, and mountain regions where summer heat stays moderate and nights cool down. Gardeners in the hot, humid South will struggle with this plant, and pretending otherwise does nobody any favors. The bloom window is late spring through early summer, roughly May and June. It is a relatively short season compared to some of the other perennials on this list, but the sheer intensity of the display compensates for the brevity. When the flower spikes fade, you have 2 paths. Cut the spike back to the base of the plant, and in many cases a second, smaller flush of blooms will follow a few weeks later. Or allow the seed pods to develop, harvest the seed, and sow it for new plants the following year. The seedlings may not match the parent plant exactly in color, but they will still produce beautiful, vigorous spikes of their own. Lupins are not the longest-lived perennials. 3 to 5 years is a typical lifespan for an individual plant, which is shorter than most others on this list. That is exactly why allowing some self-seeding or deliberately saving seed matters. It ensures continuity, so the display refreshes itself naturally without you having to purchase new plants every few years. One pest to watch for. Aphids are drawn to lupin flower spikes the way hummingbirds are drawn to salvia. Check the spikes regularly, especially as buds are forming and opening. A strong blast from the garden hose knocks most of them off. If the population builds beyond what water pressure can handle, insecticidal soap applied directly to the clusters takes care of the rest without harming the plant or the beneficial insects visiting nearby flowers. The bonus that separates lupins from everything else on this list is what happens underground. As a legume, the lupin fixes atmospheric nitrogen directly into the soil through specialized bacteria living in nodules on its roots. While it is standing there looking spectacular above ground, it is quietly feeding and improving the earth it grows in. Very few ornamental plants offer that kind of dual function. For homesteaders, permaculture gardeners, and anyone building soil health over the long term, that nitrogen-fixing ability is not just a nice fact to know. It is a genuine reason to grow this plant, beyond the obvious visual payoff. You have just seen 11 perennials that cover every season from early spring through late fall. Every light condition from full blaze to deep shade, and every soil type from rich loam to rocky, gravel. They come back on their own, they spread, they support pollinators, they save you from spending the same money on the same dead annuals every single year. And several of them actually improve with age in ways that reward your patience. A garden built around these 11 plants is not just beautiful in June. It is performing in April, still delivering in October, and holding structure through January. If this video changed how you think about even one corner of your yard, subscribing is how you make sure the next one reaches you before planting season moves on. Every week, this channel covers exactly this kind of detail: the real information, the specific techniques, the honest zone recommendations, so that your garden gets better every single year instead of repeating the same expensive cycle. One tap, that is all it takes. Now, before you go, here is something worth thinking about. Out of these 11 perennials, which single one would you plant if you could only choose one, and why? There is no wrong answer, but your reasoning tells you more about what you actually want from your garden than any plant tag or catalog description ever could. Drop your pick in the comments. I genuinely want to know.